Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm at the Ramgarhia Sikh temple today. Andy Street came to give his greetings on the celebration of Shri Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Gurpurab, and I took the opportunity to talk to him. So I'm going to talk to Andy Street. Andy Street, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Andy, welcome to the Sikh channel and the Ramgarhia Gurdwara in Birmingham. You came here to give your greetings and your auspicious day of the Guru Gobind Singh Ji's birthday. Thank you very much for it coming there. So I've taken the opportunity to talk to you today. Let's start with the cars. It's dropped about 5% or thereabouts in sales for the first time for nearly a decade, and especially the diesel cars. What is the reason for dropping? Why people not buying it? But the diesel cars, the newer cars, are not very polluted way of saying that they're not polluting the environment, but the older cars were. And what are you going to do with the old cars? And what are your views on that?
Okay, so let me start off by saying what a pleasure it was to come along to the Ramgarhia Gurdwara today. It's a return here, so it was excellent to be here at the end of the celebrations for the birthday of Guru Gobind Singh. So it was brilliant to be here. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity of this conversation. So coming straight to your question, we've just had the annual figures. As you say, total car sales down by about 5%. It was still the third highest year ever, so a lot of cars were sold. Yeah. And I think there's two things going on. First of all, within the numbers, the big growth was in electric cars, and we should spend just a second on that, because actually that was good news, because that actually shows consumers looking to make an environmentally sensitive purchase and choosing an electric car. And we are getting ourselves in the West Midlands at the centre of that industry. So that's good news.
I know the government announced that 2040, I mean, it's a long way away, that electric cars will be on the roads.
Yes.
Are we ready? Is the infrastructure there?
So we're not ready yet, but the good news was that just before Christmas, it was announced that in Coventry, there would be the National Centre of Battery Research. So that will help us make the cars more reliable, be able to go further, because that's the big challenge at the moment. And also, we're beginning to put the infrastructure in place for charging at the roadsides, maybe at homes. So yes, that all has to be done. But for certain, what the figures were saying was there is a new consumer trend here, which is going to grow and grow and grow. And it's essential that the West Midlands is at the heart of that.
Coming back to the diesel cars, the older cars which were polluting the environment, what are you going to do with them?
Okay, so the first thing to say about diesels, and your question draws it out, is new diesel cars are actually pretty clean. Huge progress has been made by all the manufacturers over recent years to improve that, so that too is good news. But there is a definite issue with old diesel cars that do pollute the environment. So what we have been saying, no decision yet here in the West Midlands, but we've got to come up with a policy around a clean air zone. And I expect us to be looking potentially at charging the most polluting vehicles. And that's not just cars, remember, that's old commercial vehicles as well for going into that zone. Yeah. So we hope that will also encourage people to replace the vehicles, and possibly we'll be going for a scrappage scheme as well to encourage people to replace their vehicles with new vehicles.
Well, at the same time, the cars themselves, whether the diesel or petrol or any cars, we are on the road. There's coming a big car park on the roads in the mornings, in the afternoons, and the cars are, it's very well by saying it's dropped in sales. There's so many cars, and every household average 2 or 3 cars these days. So, it's a small country really, relatively. What can we do about that?
So you're absolutely right. Congestion is a huge problem in the West Midlands, and I said in my campaign, and I hope I've acted on this since, that we're going to invest in public transport to give people an alternative to their cars. So let's just have a look at what's already been agreed. We've agreed that we are going to extend the metro system, build more park and ride spaces at train stations and indeed at metro stations to give people an alternative. We've also said we're going to invest in our main railway lines, heavy rail. You've seen the new franchise with West Midlands trains, more trains being put on order, so there'll be longer trains, more regular trains to new destinations. And I hope we're even going to reopen closed railway lines like the Camphill line out through Moseley and Kings Heath to give people an alternative to sitting in their car. So big investment there, more investment than ever before in public transport across the West Midlands.
It's so very well, Andy, saying that. And I do remember about the metro. It was on the drawing board for nearly 20 years. Then it only came from Wolverhampton to Birmingham. We need the West Midlands connected. Coventry, Solihull, Kidderminster, Walsall. We need to connect all those so we can take people away from the cars. They can travel to work or for leisure easily.
So we're saying the same thing. And what I would put to you, if we're really blunt about this, people have been talking about extending the metro for 20 years, as you say. But let's examine the facts. People talked about it. It's only in the last few weeks that we've actually secured the money. I said I would do that during the campaign. We have done it, and we're now actually starting the works to extend that metro out through Sandwell and Dudley and onto Brierley Hill. We're also extending it out past the town hall in the centre of Birmingham, along the Hagley Road, and extending it to Wolverhampton Station, and also extending it to the new HS2 station at Curzon Street. So this isn't just talk. We are now getting on and doing what people have talked about for decades.
Are you able to deliver that within your tenure? Do you have 4 years, I gather? Are you going to do that within your time? Or if Labour government comes in, they do away with the Metro Mayor?
So, to be absolutely clear, I have 3 years as first term, and then it's been agreed that for the second term, the Mayor's role and the Police and Crime Commissioner's role will come together. So there's another election in 2020. I think whichever party is in power, the Metro Mayor, to answer your question directly, will continue because it's proving to work. And then in terms of the timing on these extensions to the Metro, actually some will open just before the election, like the Edgbaston line. Some will be after the next election, 2020. But what matters is the money secured? Has the work started? Because then there's no looking back.
Yeah, just before I move on to the next question, but when we said talking about 20 years, HS2, we've been talked about. When I visit other countries in the world, they talk less, but they actually implement it and they put it together. Why in this country we talk and talk and talk till we blue in the face, then we suddenly say we're going to do it?
Yeah, so I'm trying to disprove that by actually getting on and delivering what I said I'd do in the manifesto. On HS2, I generally agree with your point about infrastructure, that it takes us too long. But HS2 I don't think is the best example, because that was first talked about the end of the Labour government, and actually the government have, through against all sort of political headwinds, continued with their case, and that too is now being built. £8 billion of contracts have been awarded last year, 2017 now, predominantly to West Midlands companies, so that too is actually happening. There will be a station in central Birmingham, there will be a station outside at the NEC, so another good example of talk being turned into action.
Okay, let's move on. Why is it at Christmas time or New Year's time, and we are one of the largest economies of the world, why do we have people sleeping rough on the streets and food banks? More and more food banks are coming on there, some have been looted actually, and so why in this day and age we're living through that? Why aren't the government, local government, or you as a mayor doing something about it?
So on the question of rough sleeping, we have said we are going to do something about it, to quote.
Everybody's been saying for years.
Okay, so let's again examine the facts. So I think probably worth saying 3 things have happened that are different over the last 12 months. First of all, if we look in Birmingham, where the problem is the worst, it does exist in other towns and cities across the West Midlands, but it's worse in central Birmingham. There is new government money, which has brought about what they call a street intervention team, which is run by the City Council, full credit to them. So if you are rough sleeping, there are now teams that come out, get alongside you, and it's containing nurses, housing associations, police officers, that's appropriate, to actually find the solution for you. So that team is new and is there and is doing a good job. The second thing is we've actually launched a way in which the public or businesses can put support with cash for rough sleepers, and that too, it's called Change into Action, the website that's been set up, and that too is going well. So new cash comes and it goes directly to help those rough sleepers. And then the third new change, this is one I'm very pleased about, is that we've secured agreement from government that the West Midlands, alongside Liverpool and Manchester, will be a trial for the new scheme that we call Housing First, and that will be an opportunity for people who are rough sleeping to move into a permanent residence. It's probably a shared place, but it is actually a place where they can rebuild their lives. So again, I would say to you, I said I would do something, and I have done something.
Well, on the same issue, before I move on to the next point, when people are rough sleeping, I know the schemes are there. If they are ill, doctors not seeing them, they can't get to the hospital. They've been ignored. There's been cases reported in the media about that. And so people, in this day and age, I keep on saying, a economy such as this, and should we really having that kind of thing?
I can reassure you that as part of the street intervention team, there are medical services. And there is a way that those who are unfortunately rough sleeping can get medical care. So you're absolutely right, it should not be the case, but when it is the case, there is the option to get that medical care.
Okay, the food banks, right, I really very upset or angry about it. Why do we need food banks in this day and age? We shouldn't have them. There's supermarkets, right, they're throwing £1 million of worth food away. And right, the food banks, who do they go into? There are people who are really not well off, I wouldn't say. The people who don't need food, they're queuing up as well.
I don't think that's right, actually. The food banks are very clear as to who they try to serve. So I do think they do a very good job in making sure their services go to the right people.
Yeah, but I know, but what I'm saying is that's a factual thing I'm stating to you. It has happened.
Okay,
it has
I'll
happened.
take your word for it. But in principle, the food banks are there to make sure they serve the right people. And, you know, that I would say that it is actually a positive thing that at least that provision is there. Of course, we would dearly like that it wasn't necessary, but at least there is that provision. So I think that should be, that those who run those should be applauded for doing that.
Yes, I mean, I know we have done it. I've been involved with it. That's why I said it was a factual thing. It has happened. But then, on the positive side, Birmingham went for Olympics in 1992. I was part of it.
Yes, we were joking, we both still got the ties.
Yes, I have a number of other souvenirs. Now, Birmingham is awarded the Commonwealth Games, right? Yes. It's congratulations to them that they have finally got it. Some of the infrastructure is there, but we're talking about food banks, we're talking about the people sleeping rough, and how really people, the City Council or the Commonwealth Committee going to manage with the funds.
Okay, so let's be clear about this. This is good news for the region, and it's actually been a regional effort to put this funding together. So let's be really clear that actually 3/4 of the money comes from central government for this. And that's brilliant news that the region has won that investment from central government. It's about £600 million of money being spent here that would not otherwise have been spent here.
Well, can I just stop you there? Where did the government found this money? The government is crying that there's no fund for the NHS, there's no fund for education, there's no fund for transport. Where have they found this money from?
Government have been persuaded that it is in the interest of the British taxpayer to do it. So they'd crawled all over the numbers, and we had to convince them that it was a good investment, and they've supported that. Treasury have supported it, which is brilliant news. So that's the government contribution, which is the lion's share of it. So that's why I say it's good news. Then locally, or more appropriately regionally, we've all come together, the City Council, the Combined Authority, the local enterprise partnerships, you name it. And that's been a great regional effort to put that together. And I can absolutely reassure you, and the leader of the City Council has said the same, it is not going to cut into the monies used for paying for existing services. So it is a very positive story for the West Midlands. And I stress West Midlands because there'll be events in Sandwell, there'll be events in Cannock, there'll be events in Coventry, there'll be events in Warwickshire, there'll be events in Solihull, and that's why everyone's come together.
Well, there's all a lobby, the people who are saying that we, NHS, accident and emergency, crying for funding. Why are we going to stage this for a few days and people maybe enjoying themselves and then that money is being starved from the NHS? I know you're saying it's a different funding, but it could be better spent.
I don't agree that it could be better spent, actually, because if we'd not got that, I don't think there would have been extra money in the NHS of the West Midlands.
Well, that's wrong, though, isn't it?
No, it's not, because no one has said that this has prevented any investment in the NHS at all. Let's be really clear. This was a regional opportunity. We were in competition with other regions, so would you have preferred the government had spent this money in Liverpool? Oh, no. This is a way the government has spent money in the West Midlands. It will repay, and it's also a brilliant opportunity for the West Midlands to position, and Birmingham in particular, to position itself around the world. And that's why I've been a great believer in it. And my read of it is actually citizens of the West Midlands are very proud that we have finally won this bid.
What investment or any benefits it'll bring? I mean, we had the Olympics in London and people are saying that the legacy isn't that great. What legacy will the Commonwealth Games live for the West Midlands or Birmingham?
Yeah, so I think there's three types of legacy here. First of all, there will be some new facilities built. A brand new swimming pool in Sandwell, which will be used by the public afterwards. Brilliant state-of-the-art pool. The athletic stadium up in Perry Bar, so that's a much improved stadium. So that's the first legacy. The second legacy is the Athletes Village, which is also in Perry Bar, will then become housing for Birmingham families afterwards. So that too is a really positive legacy. And actually in London, that part of it has worked really well. And then thirdly, the legacy is much more difficult to actually pinpoint, but it's about this reputation of a place. And you know, places do trade on their reputation. And if we've got an opportunity to show the world what a wonderful bit of progress is being made here, you don't know the value of that long term.
Andy, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for your time. And obviously, Commonwealth Games and any other things happening, and we'll come back and talk to you again. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਨ ਐਂਡੀ ਸਟਰੀਟ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਲ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਅੱਗੇ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ ਫਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਦਿਓ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ